Okay, good evening, everyone. It is November 13th, 2025. This week's Parsha is Parshas Chayei. It'd be really cool by the end of the year to get through every single Parsha and have a class recorded. I don't think I've ever done that. And that's actually very exciting. Okay, so there's this Parsha, as all of them, is loaded with tons of really cool stuff. There's an idea that I saw years ago from one of my rabbis in yeshiva, and as I was researching this week's Parsha, it was reminded to me. And oh, do you need the code? Yeah, no problem. So hold on 1 second. So here we go. Just give it a second to scan in. Okay. If you just go to your camera, that just should work automatically.
Do it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. QR codes are cool. All right. So as an idea, I first saw this idea years ago, and I had forgotten about it for a bit. And then as I was researching the class, I saw in one of my rabbi's essays this idea again. I was like, oh, such a cool idea. So I want to return to it. And I was thinking about it and looking through it, and I want to share with you tonight. So there's a particular question that, sometimes like Rashi, one of our greatest commentators, he will often give a commentary, but he won't necessarily tell you what's the question he's answering. There's even some books called "What's Bothering Rashi," right? Which is all trying to figure out. And it's like a whole thing about learning Rashi is to infer from his answer what's the question he's answering, because it's one of those things where the question is always the answer is always much better if you know what he's trying to say. So if you take a look at chapter 24 in Parshas, so in Perek Chavdal, this is in this particular chumash, it's on page 108 in the Art Scroll chumash. Excuse me. So it starts to say this is after the beginning of the parsha where Sarah passes away, and Abraham purchases for her the gravesite at the Marsa Machpelah, which is a fascinating story in its own. We're not going to.
It's not a very Jewish-like story because he's overpaying for the property so much.
No. You see, it actually is very Jewish because it's so Jewish. You think he's overpaying for it, but he's actually getting a bargain. The amount he's paying for it is nothing compared to its value.
Kind of like when the pioneers were buying land in Israel and they were paying much more than you could pay for an equivalent amount of farmland.
Right. So everyone's like, all of the Turkish landlords were like, oh, we're really getting over these Jews, but the Jews were like, we would pay 10 times more to have a piece of Eretz Israel, right? So Abraham was like, this place is so holy. He didn't bargain for a second because he said, even 10 times more money I would spend for this. Okay, but that's not our focus today, although definitely a fascinating part of the Torah. So this is the beginning of the story of Abraham sending Eliezer to find a wife for Rivka, which is a crazy story, but I want to focus really only on the first pasuk and try to understand Rashi's point here. It says, now Abraham was old. They translate it as well on in years. It's cute. Abraham Zaken Baba Yamim, literally it means he came with his days. Okay, I can see why they translated idiomatically. Right? Vashem berachas Abraham bakol, and Hashem had blessed Abraham with everything. Vayomer Abraham el Avdon. Abraham said to his servant, Zakein Beso, the elder one of his household, Hamoshel bechol shelo, the one who ruled all over. He's like head secretary, the guy who controlled everything, his main secretary servant. And then he tells him, Simna yodcha tachas yirechi, place your hand under my thigh and swear. And then he goes through this whole process of having him swear and then go to get a wife for his son. So Rashi comments, right? And he says, let's see if I can find the commentary. So it says, Beirach as Avram Akol. He blessed Avram with everything. Bechol oila begematria ben. The word bakol has the same numerical value as the word son, ben. Now that he has a son, now he has to go get for him a wife. What is Rashi trying to answer? Right? He's coming up with, well, you see, the word bakol, everything has the numerical value of son, and that's why now that he has a son, Well, his son is 37 years old now, right? Everyone thinks of the story of Abraham, actually 40 at this point. This is, yeah, 3 years later, right? Abraham, Yitzchak is 40 years old. So he's had a son for 40 years. So why only now does Abraham wake up and say, "Oh, I have a son. I should go get him a wife"? So, and by the way, many commentators are trying to answer really what Rashi's question is: why now? Why was this the moment that Abraham decided to go and find a wife for his son? And other commentators say it was Yitzchak was almost sacrificed on the mountain, and Abraham was like, "Whoa!" Like that could have been the end. Or maybe now that his wife has passed away, he's like, "Oh my goodness!" Like we have to think of legacy. So there are different commentators, not just Rashi, but they're all bothered by the same question. The question is, why now? Why is this the moment that Abraham decided at the age of 40 and not in many years prior? Or why not wait till longer? Because Abraham himself is very old here. He's 140 years old. And his own father lived to be 250 or something. Terach lived to be something, right? So he knows that Yitzchak is a young man. He's got many years, many decades to go. And in fact, Yitzchak lived to be 180. We know that Yitzchak lived to be 180. That's why many Sfardim, instead of saying Ad Mea Ke'esrin, they say Ad Mea V'Shmonim. They say, should he live to be 120? Instead of like Moshe Rabbeinu, who lived to be 120, they say, why should we limit ourselves to Moshe? Yitzchak was the oldest Jew, right? So to speak. Right, so he's gonna live another 140 years. Why are you rushing? Let him earn a living. Let him let him build his portfolio. Let him go. So either why not earlier or why not later, right? So one of my rabbis came up with an unbelievable answer. He says Rashi actually is also hinting to us the answer. The answer is with the word bakol. Once it says in the pasuk that Hashem had blessed Abraham with everything, now he said it's time to get Yitzchak a wife. Why? What is the connection between this? So Rabbi, this is primarily based on the teachings of Rabbi Nassim Weiss that I mentioned.
Also, why not send him to find a wife? So because
Well, that we see in other places. This is Yitzchak can't leave Israel.
that's like a halacha. Abraham decides for
It
it.
says what because once Yitzchak was brought up as a holy offering on the mountain, he is holy and pure. He can't leave. He's not allowed to go out of Israel. And so he has to send to find a wife from outside of the Holy Land of Israel. He has to send, and he's going to Mesopotamia. He's going back to his old home. So he has to send his servant to do it. Can't send Yitzchak can't leave. And in fact, Yitzchak never leaves Israel. Right? He stays in Israel his whole life. Okay. So it's a good question, but the rabbis already anticipated that issue and they already discussed it. So Rabbi Nassim Weiss points out that we see that each of the forefathers was blessed with everything. Right. Later on, it says that by Yitzchak that he was blessed. He Mikol. That's right. And it's that's one of the things that my rabbi says. He says we see in the benching in the Birkat Hamazon, he says we're blessed Bakol Mikol Kol. This is based on the blessings that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov get. Avram was blessed here in this pasuk Bakol. Later on by Yitzchak, it says that he was blessed Mikol from all of the blessings. And by Yaakov, when Yaakov and Esav later eventually meet, and Esav says, "What is all this you have?" And what I want to give you. And Yaakov says, "No, you don't have to give me anything. Yeshli Kol. I have everything." Right? So Bakol was Avraham, Mikol was Yitzchak, and Kol was Yaakov. So there's some connection. The Mikubalim, the mystics say that this word Kol is incredibly important, and it is only once Abraham was blessed by Kol, then he said, "Now it's time to continue the generations." The generations couldn't continue until that moment. And exactly the moment he gets blessed by Kol, now he says it's time to get a wife for Yitzchak. So what is this Kol blessing? And we see in another place that this Kol blessing is so important because somebody tried to steal it from us.
You're talking about Ishmael?
Nope. Good guess. I would have said Ishmael or Esav personally, but neither of them. Who tried to steal everything from us?
Everything?
Everything. Kol. Who tried to take kol? Kol means everything. Only one person ever does it say in Torah tried to take from us everything. Nope.
No, well, Amalek is not a person.
No, he was a person, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
They
Yeah.
tried to take everything at this stage around when
Was it
It's-
Lavan?
it's- oh, that's correct. Lavan.
Oh, wow.
You're getting clapping, right? So Lavan tried to take, and we see this in the Pesach Seder. During the Pesach Seder, it says, an Aramean tried to destroy my family. And it says, like the whole thing, right? It says you that Lavan tried to take, clearly, he tried to take everything. Because why? Why did what is it? What's the simple understanding? He tried to take everything because he tried to end Yaakov's ability to reproduce and have children. Don't take the, come back. Don't take my daughters away. Don't take the grandkids. Gonna take everything. But what the mystics say, the Kabbalists say is no. It's something much. It's not just the simple explanation of keeping Yaakov away from going back to Israel and keep him in the bad places and make Judaism disappear. It's actually that there's something called, the mystics call kol. They call everything. It's a mystical power that Hashem blessed Abraham with it. Abraham, once he was blessed with it, was able to give it to Yitzchak. Once Yitzchak was able to get it, he was able to give it to Yaakov. But you see that there's actually three different levels of this blessing, three levels of kol, because it's ba kol, mi kol, and kol. It's not exactly the same. Two of them have a modifier, and one of them doesn't. So I don't know what this means. I'm just going to tell you what I read from my rabbi and what he teaches from the Kabbalah. I can't possibly tell you what it means. But apparently the kol power exists on three levels. The lowest level is called the daughter. That's bakol. The middle level is called the sister. That's mikol. And the highest level is called the mother. That's kol. And only the mother is permanent. Like it's the highest level. Once the Jewish people needed to have all three levels, Abraham introduced this power to the Jewish people on the lowest level. His son Yitzchak elevated it to the higher level, and Yaakov elevated it to the highest level, where now, once he had it on the highest level, the level of mother, whatever that means, he was then able to transfer it permanently to all the Jewish people forever. And since Yaakov and the 12 tribes, the Jewish people for all time are the owners of this power of kol. So what is this power? So the place to see, ironically, is much later. The rabbi who best explained this power was only 200 years ago.
Where was that?
Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Rav Chaim of Volozhin was the main student of the Gaon, and in his book Nefesh HaChaim, which I had the great pleasure of learning with two different rabbis in yeshiva. One of them was Rabbi Weiss, who I'm quoting now. So I've seen some of this stuff from him directly, and one from Rabbi Eitan Feiner, who's also an unbelievable rabbi. And so I learned some really incredible things. And they said, what is this? What is this power? So it says, Hashem. How does Hashem create the world? First of all, Hashem creates everything. Creates kol. He's the source of everything. So we're already going to this power of creation. How does Hashem create everything? So Nefesh HaChaim explains that when a person creates, they have to take pre-existing materials and reshape them into a new form. So you are creating something new, you're creating a new form, but the materials are not new. The materials are already pre-existing. And that is exactly how the pagans and the polytheists understood how the gods create the world. The gods come into a world that already has material. Right? So the Greeks, it was called the Hayuli, the infinite finiteness, which I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means, but that was the Greeks were trying to square the circle of how you can have infinite and finite existence coexisting. Their answer was that the finite is infinite. The Jews come along and say, that doesn't make any sense. The finite is the finite and the infinite is the infinite. Right? And now, in these pagan mythologies, the gods are coming into an existence that's already there. There's already stuff, and then they shape the stuff. But in Jewish consciousness, which was a big, as we say in yeshiva, a big chiddush, it was a big novel idea. They said no, all of limited finite existence was brought into existence by the infinite, completely from nothing. It's called in Hebrew yesh me'ayin. In the Christians, based on the Latin, they call it ex nihilo. It's from nothing. Yesh me'ayin. Not coincidentally, one of the Kabbalistic names for Hashem is Ayin, the nothing, because he's no thing. He's not a thing. So when we say Yesh Me'ayin, the simple translation is something from nothing. But the more Kabbalistic understanding is it's everything from Hashem. Everything comes from Hashem. That's another understanding of what that phrase means. So that Hashem is the source of all, the ultimate creator of everything that exists. Question.
There's no Yiddish protein, like epistemologist, just more about how to save money from stuff as opposed to. But I wonder if
It's nothing from nothing. It's an interesting question. I'm not at all familiar with Yiddish culture or history. It's sadly one of my big gaps in my knowledge, so I couldn't possibly tell you. But it sounds
story.
it's FS from Gornish.
It's from Gornish means something from nothing. It's about, you start with like some big.
But FS means nothing in Hebrew. It means zero.
Oh, epis means something.
Epis. Oh, I thought you said FS.
No.
I wonder if there's a relationship between the Hebrew FS, which means zero, and the Yiddish epis. I mean, maybe it's a
Yeah, it's pay. Yes, if you
Yiddish epis means something. Epis negornisht. So epis negornisht would be the Yiddish way of saying yesh me'ayin or ex nihilo.
Well, that's
Maybe
the thing. I don't know if there's any. I don't know if it ties.
we're gonna have to look it up. Let me. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it on my note. No. Questions are not distractions. This is epis made from gornisht.
From Gornish.
Epist fun gornisht. Something from it says something from nothing. I'm gonna. Apparently, there's a song. It came up on Spotify right away.
Not surprised. Good.
It's it's apparently a whole thing. Oh yeah, I'll look it up later.
There's a children's book.
There you go. So it's a part of Yiddish culture. So I'll look it up. Even though my family comes from a part of the world that they spoke Yiddish, I know Nachas and Tuchas. That's all I know from Yiddish. Right? Okay. So what were we saying? So Chaim Volozhin says that when Hashem creates, he creates absolutely from nothing. There's nothing there, and he creates everything. And the difference, what is the primary difference between the infinite mode of creation, something from nothing, and the finite mode of creation, something from something, is the independence of the creator and the dependence of the created. If I create, I don't know, let's say I take a pottery class. I actually I'm remembering, I made for my mom a little tiki thing from I had a
Still have
pottery
it.
class.
Still have
You
it.
still have it?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
funny. I was not. It was funny. My wife laughed. My wife and I laughed to this day. She came in and she saw this little thing I made for my mom, and my wife was like, "Oh, that's so cute. Were you like 7 or 8 when you made it?" I was like, "I was 16." That just shows you my absolute terrible skill. And she felt so bad. She didn't mean to embarrass me. It's like, oh yeah, we laughed about it. Yeah, I'm not very good at pottery. Anyway, so if I'm making, let's say, I don't know, like I'm making an ashtray, like a pottery ashtray. So after I make it and I leave it on the table, I never have to see it again. I just walk away. But Hashem, I'm going to put in air quotes, right? Can't do that. What do you mean Hashem can't do anything? That's a separate discussion. But Hashem can't create something and walk away from it because it's all existence is only existing because he's causing it to exist. The moment he stops putting in his effort and energy, what they call in Chassidus, it's called shefa. Shefa is the Hasidic word for Hashem's influence or energy coming into the world. If Hashem would stop putting in his shefa, it stops existing. It's not like it rots away. No, it's just gone, as if it never was, because its existence is only there because he's creating it to exist right now. So that's the difference between how Hashem creates and how we create. Now, what the Nefesh HaChaim then says, which is directly connected to our concept of kol, is that Hashem gives to the Jewish people. Now we know historically when, first through Abraham, then Yitzchak, then Yaakov, and now all the Jewish people. He gives us a share of that power. And this is what is meant. Originally, he gave it to all of humanity, but they lost it, and then it was only rediscovered by Abraham. And that is the concept of being made b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. The Nefesh HaChaim explains something that is, it's a question that I never thought of until I was learning Nefesh HaChaim with my rabbis, and I'm like, that's such an obvious question. I was so silly, never have thought of it. We were made in the image of God. No, we're not. There's no such thing as the image of God. There's the image of Elokim. The word God is English. We're made b'tselem Elokim, in the image of Elokim.
What's the difference? Sorry.
Because there's many names for God in Hebrew. There's also Hashem, Tzvakot, Shakai, Kel, and many others that are like secret Kabbalistic names. And the Torah never says anywhere they were made in the image of any other of those names. We're made in the image of one particular name. We're made only in the image of Elokim. So if you're aware of the idea that there are many names of God, and not only that, but it's not even the main name of God. The main name of God is the one that we don't even pronounce. We just say Hashem, that only the high priest on Yom Kippur could pronounce in the temple, right? Which is the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, and it never says anywhere we're made in that the image of Hashem, the image of, what do they call it? The Tetragrammaton is the fancy Greek way of saying it. Tetragrammaton is just a fancy way of saying the four-letter name. So, what does the name Elohim mean? So Rav Chaim Volozhin points out, it's obvious. You open up the Torah, it's the first name of Hashem. Boreshis boro Elohim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. It's the name that Hashem used to create the world, something from nothing. The name Hashem is not the name of creation. Right? The name that the infinite creator uses as his tool to create everything from nothing is Elohim. So we were created in the image of the name of creation. And so Rav Chaim says it's very simple. The concept of being made in the image of God means we were created to be creators. That is what we're created. And Adam and Eve were created to be creators. They lost that image. They lost the image. How do we know they lost the image? Because it says by Cain, when Hashem says to Cain after he killed his brother Havel, he says, you're going to be exiled. He says, if you exile me, I'm going to get killed by animals. So the rabbis comment, why would Cain be killed by animals? No one was worried about being killed by animals. He says, because if you have the image of God on you, the animals are afraid of you and will never hurt you. But if you don't have the image of God on you, then the animals have no fear and they'll kill you. So we see that he already saw that he didn't have the image of God anymore. And so he couldn't be out in the wilderness. He needed to be amongst other people for safety. And the rabbis say that no human being had the full image of God until Abraham brought it back. Abraham, by choosing a relationship with God and all the things that he did, he was the first one to bring back from the hidden mystical spheres, whatever, this power of a full image of God. But he wasn't able to do it permanently. He was only able to do it for himself. But he began the process. And then through his son and through Yaakov, it took three stages. I have no idea why. I couldn't possibly tell you. But these three stages, it now became permanently brought back to humanity in the Jewish people. The Jewish people are the ones who once again have access to this power.
Maybe venture a guess as to why that would be the case. I mean, it could be that you don't want any one person to have. I mean, if it all came through one person, that would be a lot of that would maybe say something in particular about that one person, but where you're transmitted through a couple of generations, then there's then the continuity of it is could be a distinction.
I'm not sure. It's a perfectly good guess. As someone in the comments asked, Fanny's iPhone? Who's Fanny? Well, whoever you are, welcome. It says, could it be because the three blessings we spoke about before? Yeah. The three blessings definitely are. Oh, hi, Alex. Trying to see how that's connected to that name of the phone. Is that your friend's phone? Anyway, welcome. Good to see you. So the three blessings, there's some sort of the best I can come up with is there is an idea the rabbis bring that each of the forefathers acted as a spiritual filter. Did you ever hear this idea before?
Yes. Because Abraham, you have Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac.
Right. Exactly. So I'll speak out the idea. So right, Abraham began the process of bringing the highest level of the human soul access again, but he still was coming from generations of imperfect humans and a lot of trouble, mistakes, sins, etc. So to speak, he acted as a filter. And then his particular quality, of course, that he was maximizing was the quality of chesed. So it says that the impure chesed was filtered out into his son Yishmael.
Because they actually very hospitable.
Correct.
They,
Right. The Ishmaelites are known historically for having people as guests, etc. But then they're guests, but then they'll raid your village and take everyone as slaves. So it's not a very pure chesed, but there's definitely it's in their culture. It's so important. Just like our forefather Abraham had guests, we're going to have guests, etc., etc. And then Yitzchak, his quality that he was focusing on was power and strength, gvura. And from his sons, the impure dark side of strength was filtered into Esav.
which is like all about sports,
Sports, power,
right,
military, conquest, exactly.
commitment, and the stoic philosophy.
Exactly. And so once the pure chesed and the pure gevura were able to be filtered to Yaakov, he was then able to combine them. He didn't have anything to filter anymore. He got the purity of both the positive and the negative were both pure in him. And then he was able to combine them to pure balance and truth and Torah, MS, all of those. It could be that these words bakol mikol are aspects of filtering. Maybe I'm guessing out loud based on other things we've learned before, because we know that ba means in or on, and mi means from. So they're modifier words. Does modification have anything to do with filtering? I don't know. I could be talking completely out of nowhere, but could be. Anyway, so to bring these ideas back, so what does it mean? Okay, wonderful. So we, the Jewish people, supposedly have this access to God's power of creation. Like, do we think we're gods? That's doesn't sound like what the rabbis want us to think, and that's definitely not what it is. The point is, the Nefesh HaChaim explains in the following way. We'll keep explaining the way he does it, since he's the one who brings it down. It says later on in the story of Yaakov, it says that Yaakov is Chevel Nachalaso, which is translated as the portion of his inheritance. Yaakov is the portion of God's inheritance. But the word in Hebrew, what's a chevel? It's a rope. Now, the simple answer is, why does the word rope used for portion? Have you ever heard?
That's how you used to measure land.
Yeah, exactly. The way you would measure land is you would put a rope around it. But Rav Chaim says, no, there's a deeper reason. Because just like if you pull on one end of the rope, no matter how far the other end is, it has an influence. You pull on the rope, the influence travels all the way down the rope and pulls on something at the end. So it says, Yaakov, we, the Jewish people, are on earth, and we pull on our rope down here, and it travels all through all the mystical levels, all the worlds, all the spheres, all the levels of the soul, until it reaches the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, and pulls on it from that side. And says the Jewish people are the only people that have access to be able to directly influence all of the spiritual realms. Okay, still, what does that mean practically? So this is being recorded, so I'll try to say it in a way that is not too antagonizing or triggering to anybody. But basically, you know how everybody always blames the Jews for all the problems of the world?
Oh, yeah.
In one way, they're right.
We're not pulling the rope.
Yeah. In other words, okay, the way that anti-Semites say it is clearly wrong. You can't the double like Natan Sharansky says, how do you know something is anti-Semitism and not legitimate criticism? He brings three Ds: demonization, double standard, or delegitimization. So if you're calling Jews demons or inhuman, that's anti-Semitism. That's not legitimate criticism. If you're saying that the state of Israel is not a legitimate state, that's not criticism. That's anti-Semitism. And if you treat the Jews completely differently than everyone else, that the Jews do the same thing as everyone else, but we are called evil and they're not, that's not legitimate criticism. That's anti-Semitism, right? That's the three Ds. I think Natan Sharansky said it the most beautifully of anyone I ever heard say it. However, if you look at it from a spiritual level, the rabbis have said in many places, let's look at it from within just the Jewish people, and then we'll extend it outwards. There's a very famous statement that was said. I don't remember which rabbi. Please forgive me. Maybe you can look it up later. There was a rabbi in the mid-19th century in Europe. He said, the Jews in Eastern Europe were more religious than the Jews in Central or Western Europe on average.
Yes.
He says when a Jew in Krakow or in Minsk or Odessa, when a Jew over there doesn't say a bracha, he says a Jew in France converts to Christianity.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm quoting it exactly, but it's something like that. He says that the people who know better and they act incorrectly, that what looks like a relatively small sin, by the time it travels through the spiritual worlds to the part of the world that people are much less religious, it expresses itself in a very big problem. The idea is that all Jews are connected to each other. All Jews are guarantors for each other. And so we have negative influence on each other, and we also have positive influence on each other. Now, that's true within the Jewish world, but it's also true for the Jews for the rest of humanity. When the Jews do not act the way the Jews are supposed to, that creates a negative spiritual repercussions for the world as a whole. That's why most of the time, not all the time, it depends. If it's Amalek, it doesn't matter. Amalek hates every Jew always. The Amalek flavor of anti-Semitism wants every Jew dead. But there's other flavors of anti-Semitism. And what's something that I discovered, I've been told this by people many times over the years, that many places, let's say you have Muslim or Christian anti-Semitism, but they're not Amalek flavor. They're just like, yeah, they're like Jews because they grew up religious in a different religion, but they have respect for religious Jews. Generally speaking, they say if a Jew is keeping Shabbos and kosher and being religious, they're not necessarily going to be the best friends with them, but they're not going to antagonize them. But when they see Jews who are not keeping Torah mitzvahs, then they're like, oh, they're the ones who are the problem. Again, Amalek doesn't care. Amalek kills everybody. Hitler kills everybody. But first they're like, okay, but when they see Jews doing what Jews are supposed to do, they say, fine, they don't bother us. Why? So my rabbi said like this. He pointed this out to me many years ago. My rabbi said, because on a subconscious level, they say they're not the problem. They're not causing any spiritual damage. Now, what he said, my rabbi said, he goes, and we're lucky that they're making that mistake. we're lucky that they're making the mistake thinking that the religious Jews are not causing the problem. So now we're going to bring a Talmud. With a few minutes left, we'll bring one of the most interesting Talmuds. The Talmud asks, why was the temple destroyed? Have you ever heard? Either one. Because it's the same Talmud discusses both. So why was the temple destroyed? What answers have you heard? Baseless hatred. Yes. What else?
I think one that I've heard was that the Jews, I mean, this is like Hebrew school level, but the Jews strayed from their from the path they're supposed to be on.
And they actually say specifically, they say that because they committed the three cardinal sins, right? They murdered, they committed adultery, and they committed idolatry. So the first temple was destroyed because of the three cardinal sins. And the second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. And so the rabbis say, you see, baseless hatred is so bad that it's as if it was murder, idolatry, and adultery. That's how bad baseless hatred is. Now that's the famous teaching that many, many people have heard. But my rabbi pointed out is he said, if you actually open up that Talmud, you notice that there's actually many more answers. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but I'll give you a few that stuck in my mind over the years. One of them is when Torah scholars did not treat each other with appropriate respect. What's the famous example of this? The students of Rabbi Akiva. True, but same problem. The students of Rabbi Akiva didn't respect each other, and a great plague came and killed them all. Right? The 12,000 pairs, right? 24,000 students. And another one is that when parents didn't keep their kids in yeshiva long enough, they took them out too early to have them go on the farm or go to earn a trade. And another one is that people didn't say the bracha before learning Torah. And there's a few more that they say. So one of my rabbis pointed that out. He says, gentlemen, room full of guys, can you tell me any common theme amongst all of these mistakes? We didn't figure it out. He had to tell us. Can you see a common theme amongst the ones that I mentioned?
Mutual disrespect, taking the kids out of studying too soon.
And not saying a blessing before learning Torah.
What kind of disconnecting knowledge?
That's true, but that's true of all
That's
sins.
for every.
That's for any sin. What's the common denominator amongst these sins?
Well, they all involve studying and
Yeah, that's because it's the ones I remember. There were others as well. So that's not fair. I can't remember the not caring for what they're doing. True. So I'll tell you what my rabbi said. He said the common theme amongst these are mistakes only religious people can make.
Oh, wow. That's a load of charge, Rabbi.
I'm only repeating what my rabbi said. He says these are mistakes only religious people can make. I'll tell you, we were in the middle, there was like a political crisis going on in Israel, and one of the big anti-religious political parties in Israel was led by a guy named Lapid. Tommy Lapid, I think was his name. And I remember my rabbi saying, you guys think Tommy Lapid is a problem? He's an atheist. He has no connection to Judaism. He's not causing any spiritual damage. He says it's people in yeshiva who know better and are still making mistakes. That's the ones that are causing ripple of spiritual damage. And then he quoted, like I said, a guy in Ukraine doesn't say a blessing. A guy in France, converts to Christianity. He says the people who are going to yeshiva, learning Torah, praying every day, going to shul, having Shabbos, eating kosher, they should know better. And they're the ones who are not caring enough to say blessings, not being respectful to other people who are learning Torah. Like in our day and age, you know who's a Torah scholar? This is not insulting, right? We're Torah scholars. We're Torah scholars in this generation. 99% of Jews don't learn Torah. And here we are every week learning Parsha, every day, learning whatever Torah we learn, or whatever level we're learning. We're the Torah scholars of today. We're the ones who know better. So the mistakes that we make are the ones that have the most repercussions, spiritually speaking. So whether it's the Jewish people as a whole compared to non-Jews, whether it's the quote-unquote religious Jews compared to not-religious Jews, the more you know, the more responsibility we have. Because the more we know, the more we connect to this creative power. It's like, I'll give you one more analogy. It's like, who's going to cause more damage to your brain? Right? Someone who is telling you something incorrect about your diet, or your brain surgeon while he's doing surgery. Obviously, the guy who's telling you something wrong about the diet will cause some damage to your brain. I'm not eating the right thing. Maybe over the years, a little bit won't be so great. But if there's a brain surgeon literally with his hands in your skull, if he makes a mistake, he's going to cause fantastically more possible damage. Of course, he's also the one that could do the most repair and the most good. If there's something to be repaired, he's the one who can do it. So the we who know, and we who learn, and we who are in it, we're the ones who can do the most good with this power, but we're also the ones who are the most possible damage can come out of it. And that's always the case. Responsibility. I remember one of my friends who was in yeshiva. He was an older student. He came years before me. Called him an elder bacher, right? The elder student. He used to be a finance guy on Wall Street, and he quit a high five-figure salary in the 1990s to go to yeshiva. So he's bigger man than me. I just quit college to go to yeshiva. I wasn't making any money yet. That's not as impressive. And I remember um, he said that when he was on Wall Street, how much respect that a guy got depended on how much money that he was managing. Guy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm managing $1 million." Get out of here. That's nothing. $1 million. Guy's managing 100 million. You're still small fry. Guy's managing 1 billion. Okay, now you can come and eat lunch with us. Guy's managing, $100 billion. Okay, now that's serious. Now why? Because that's responsibility. Guy's managing $1 million. He can do no damage to the economy. He'll lose. That's how a few thousand people, a few $1,000s each. Yeah, it's painful for a few people, but no big deal. Guy who's managing billions of dollars, right? The guy who's managing the largest economy in the world. He's the guy who can do the most damage, but he's also the guy who can do the most good. That's the weight of responsibility. The Jewish people have the weight of the destiny of the entire human race for all of time on our shoulders. Because our forefathers, Aaron, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they took that responsibility onto their shoulders and passed it down to us. It's not difficult to understand why so many Jews over the generations have fled from this responsibility. It's too heavy to bear. And it also gives us an understanding about why there's a mitzvah in the Torah. We have a mitzvah in the Torah to love Jews. There's another mitzvah in the Torah to love converts. That means that you have to love a convert twice, once as a convert and once as a Jew. Because they said, I want to bear this burden with you. I had people who grew up religious looking at me who didn't grow up religious, and they said, I don't know if I would have started to do what you did. I'm sure you've heard this also.
Yes.
Right? I was like, okay, but I don't have a choice. I'm born Jewish. I don't have a choice. I could decide not to do it, but it's still the burden's on my shoulders whether I decide to carry it or not. But somebody who decides to carry it on, that sounds nuts. But yeah, that's where we who know we're carrying the burden and are aware of its importance, with Hashem's help, we'll be the ones who will fix the world. Good Shabbos. Thank you for coming.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. And we'll Bezos Hashem next time, same bad channel, same bad place.